Hello, everybody. Michael Gurian here. We're getting toward, if people are watching this during our conference, we're getting toward the home stretch. And we so appreciate everyone. We know that most people will watch on YouTube. This is part of the What Boys Need as Males conference. And I want to just thank Dr. Fletcher and Dakota and Jason, who does all the video and all the web, all the people in the Gurian Institute system, and Paul Golding, Bonnie Ellinger, the whole Santa Fe Boys Fund, the Green Foundation, all of us. This is a co-project. Just want to thank everybody. And I now have the chance to thank Jed Diamond for joining us. Dr. Jed Diamond is just wonderful, very wise. We do go back a number of years, just loving each other's work. He has specialties in evolutionary biology and men's health. He will tell you more. You might know him from a number of his books. One of them was The Irritable Male Syndrome, which was, I think, a huge bestseller. Just an incredibly wise person. And Jed, we're so glad to have you. So welcome to the conference and take it away.
Thank you, Michael and Dr. Fletcher and everybody that's been participating in the conference so far. The organizers, the speakers, this has just been wonderful. I'm glad to be in the home stretch with you all. And I just turned 82 recently, and I got into this field a long time ago, really in November of 1969, when I held my newborn son, Jamal, in my arms for the first time. And I made a vow that I would be a different kind of father than my father was able to be for me, and to do everything I could to create a world where fathers and men and boys and girls grew up to have really healthy lives. As Michael said, my expertise, what I hope to share with you, is based on my now six grown children, 17 grandchildren, and four great grandchildren, what I've learned from them. My wife, Carlin, will tell you that one of the reasons that she feels we continue to have a successful 45-year marriage is because I've been in a men's group that has been meeting continuously for 46 years. I have a background in clinical practice and evolutionary-trained psychologist. And what I want to share with you today is the evolution of maleness. And this really came out of one of my books that I was planning to write, the 12 rules that I really wanted to look at of maleness. You know, what are the 12 rules for really being a good man? And I wanted to see, where did maleness begin? And, you know, the evolutionary journey that we've all been on. And it turns out scientifically that's a billion years ago. So all through evolutionary history, it started a billion years. So I want to address what Michael talked about, lighthouse issues, those ones that really are the solid issues that we need to ground things on. I'm going to hopefully have questions at the end, and I want to also tell everybody, questions that don't get answered, if you email me at jed@menalive.com, I'll answer any questions you have, and also send you a more detailed document about these issues, because we won't have time to get into great depth today. So I want to start with what I call the 7 significant things that I've learned over the last 60 plus years. And I'm going to start, I call it On the Biology of Maleness. My undergraduate degree was in biology before I went to medical school. And biologists have a very simple definition of maleness that I want to just say to you. An individual can either make many small gametes or sex cells, or fewer but larger gametes. The individuals that produce smaller gametes are called males, and the ones that produce larger gametes are called females. And I want to share a little bit about some of the people that have talked about maleness and femaleness. And at the beginning, I want to just say that these are generalities, they're individual differences throughout, but some of these large generalities I think can be helpful. So, in the area of maleness, Dr. Steve Jones is a professor of genetics and head of the Galton Laboratory at the University of College London. And he says this cellular imbalance is at the center of maleness. Generally, it is easier to move the smaller sperm to the larger egg than vice versa. So it is the male that seeks out the female, and the female who makes the selection from those males that come calling. That's the biology. A lot of these things you're going to have to, let sink in because they say a lot and in a small number of words, but let these come in you. So that's number one. Number two, on the size and number of gametes. That's an important one. Here's the simple. We know that if you looked at an egg under a microscope, it would be very small. But the truth is that the human egg, listen to this, the human egg is 85,000 times larger than a sperm. So each man produces 100 to 300 million sperm per ejaculate. So again, a little background on this. Dr. Stephen Emlin, who's a professor of behavioral ecology at Cornell University and a world authority on the social behavior of animals. Here's what he says. Because of all the resources females will put into each egg, it makes sense in most cases for her to be choosy about whose genes she allows to combine with it and to continue to invest in its growth and survival after fertilization, and for males to compete for access. Now, one of the other kind of leaders in the field that Michael knows well, who I've known for quite some time, is David Page. And this gets into number three, I call the genetics of maleness. So David Page is an MD. He's a professor of biology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he says there are 10 trillion cells in the human body, and every one of them is sex specific. When you unpack that, that says a lot. And he says, with rare exceptions, each of our cells has an X and Y chromosome or an XX pair of chromosomes. So XY if we're male, XX if we're female. Dr. Page goes on to say, quote, it has been said that our genomes are 99.9% identical from one person to the next. It turns out that this assertion is correct as long as the two individuals being compared are both men or if the two are both female. But if we compare the genome of a man with the genome of a woman, you'll find that they are only 98.5% identical. In other words, he says, the genetic difference between a man and a woman are 15 times greater than the genetic difference between two men or between two women. We'll let these sink in. You're going to have to listen to these maybe a number of times and delve more deeply. But number four, on the anatomy and function of the male brain. Now, you've had a lot of information about the male brain. I'm not going to go into a great deal of depth, but I want to highlight the work of Luann Brizendine. She's an MD, neuropsychiatrist at the University of California, San Francisco. It happens to be the medical school where I started out, and so I have a particular interest in her work. Plus, she's written two really seminal books, so to speak, on the male brain and the female brains. So I'm going to just hit a couple of the high points that I've found particularly useful in my understanding of male-female. So this is from her work. The anterior cingulate cortex weighs options and makes decisions. It's the worrywart center, she says, and it's larger in women and smaller in men. The medial preoptic area is the area of sexual pursuit. It's 2.5 times larger than in the male brain. She says the temporal parietal junction is the solution seeker. It's more active in the male brain, comes online more quickly, and races towards a fix-it-fast solution. I got to watch that one. That's me in spades. And finally, she says the hippocampus is a center for emotional memory. She says it's the elephant that never forgets a fight, a romantic encounter, or a tender moment, and won't let you forget it either. She knows that it is larger and more active in women. So those are just a few of the differences in brain. You've learned a whole lot more. You've gotten into great depth with this. But number 5 is hormones and the truth about testosterone. Again, I want to give you again some of the people that I've worked with. In her book, The Alchemy of Love and Lust, Teresa Crenshaw, MD, says that men have about 20 to 40 times more testosterone than women. We know both males and females have testosterone as well as estrogens, but she says it's one of the reasons why our sex drives are so different. This forceful hormone, I'm quoting, is responsible for the drive associated with sexual appetite and patterns of aggression, higher in male. Another person who's one of the experts in the field is Dr. Carol Hooven. She's a human evolutionary biologist and associate in Harvard's Department of Psychology and in the lab of Steven Pinker. She's also an active member of the newly established Council on Academic Freedom at Harvard. In her book, T, The Story of Testosterone, the hormone that dominates and divides us, that's the title of the book, she says the consensus of experts is that testosterone's main job is to support the anatomy, physiology, and behavior that increases males' reproductive output, at least in non-human animals. And men are no exception. We need to remember, men, we all, and all of us are animals. We forget that sometimes. She says, T helps them reproduce and directs energy to be used in ways that support competition for males. And I know Michael and Dr. Amon's talk about testosterone, I think really, helped underline some of the issues around testosterone and how low testosterone is a problem. So number 6, on our inherent biological vulnerability. Another colleague of mine, Marianne J. Legato, MD, is Professor Emerita of Clinical Medicine at Columbia University and founder of the Foundation of Gender-Specific Medicine. In her book, Eve's Rib, The New Science of Gender-Specific Medicine and How It Can Save Your Life, she says this: everywhere we look, the two sexes are startlingly and unexpectedly different, not only in their internal function, but in the way they experience illness. In her follow-up book, Why Men Die First, How to Lengthen Your Lifespan, she says this: the premature death of men is the most important and neglected health issue of our time. Yes, I think we would have much to underlie that. And the final person I want to just highlight for you is Dr. Sharon Molem, MD, PhD, who's an award-winning physician and scientist. And recent research demonstrates that genetic males have greater health risks at every stage of their lives. In his book, it's called The Better Half, on the genetic superiority of women, he says, males, I was taught, are the stronger sex. And yet, that's the opposite of what the research demonstrates. I think we've learned a lot about that. We now, and I'm still quoting Dr. Molem, we now know that genetic females' longevity advantage can be attributed to factors that are biological in nature. Having the use of 2 X chromosomes makes females more genetically diverse, and the ability to rely on that diverse genetic knowledge is why females always come out on top in living longer. So this isn't to say that there aren't other things that, social things, cultural issues, but I think we've recognized that the biological and evolutionary science that we're talking about is really crucial and often neglected. So number 7, last point I want to make, I call it on our true nature of men as great lovers and protectors of life. And again, I want to make you aware of Dr. Christine Webb, who's a primatologist at Harvard's Department of Human Evolutionary Biology. In her book, The Arrogant Ape, The Myth of Human Exceptionalism and Why It Matters, she reminds us, Darwin considered humans to be a part of the web of life, not the apex of a natural hierarchy. Yet today, many maintain that we are the most intelligent, virtuous, successful species that ever lived. This flawed thinking enables us to exploit the earth toward our own exclusive ends, throwing us into a perilous planetary imbalance, unquote. Now, Thomas Berry, the geologian and historian of religion, warned us, and this has been a seminal kind of reminder for me. And Berry said, "We never knew enough, nor were we sufficiently intimate with all our cousins in the great family of the earth, nor could we listen to the various creatures of the earth, each telling their own story. The time has now come when we will listen or we will die," unquote. Now, my wife and I, Carlin, had the great good fortune to attend a conference in 1993 that was called Ovarios y Cojones. And I think the biological basis of the title will tune you into this. It was co-presented by Michael Mead, many of you know that name, a storyteller, and a woman named Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. And towards the end of the presentation, Clarissa said, "I have a poem to share." And nobody knew, I think, I didn't know that she wrote poetry. And she offered this poem that I want to close with. It's called Father Earth. She says, "There is a 2 million-year-old man no one knows. They cut into his rivers. They peeled wide pieces of hide from his legs. They left scorch marks on his buttocks. He did not cry out. No matter what they did to him, he did not cry out. He held firm. And now he raises his stabbed hands and whispers that we can heal him yet. We begin the rolls of gauze, the gut, the needles, the grafts. Slowly, carefully, we turn his body face up. And underneath him, the old woman is perfect and unmarked. He is laid upon his 2 million-year-old lover all this time, protecting her with his old back, with his old scarred back. And the soil beneath her is fertile and black with her tears. Father Earth." Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I got to tell you, every time the first time heard that poem, there were tears coming down my eyes, and every time I've recited it, often in men's groups, the response I've got is finally a woman, somebody really gets what we're about, and this integration, this connection of male, female, and Father Earth. And it helped me remind me, one of my friends and colleagues, Robert Bly, who used to say that young men need to be in the presence of older men in order to hear the sound that male cells sing. I think everything we are doing and what I'm hoping is that this beautiful song that male cells sing needs to be honored, recognized, and hopefully this gift that we all are feeling in our souls will be shared here in our own lives and throughout our time together. So I want to thank you for being here. I'm happy to address any immediate questions you have, and then hopefully, if we don't get them all answered today and others have them, I'll be glad to answer through email and happy to send out some more detail about this presentation that we don't have time, but I hope this has been helpful to you. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, very helpful, Jed. Let's pursue it because we do still have time. Um, uh, uh, let's pursue it. A part of me wants you to read that poem again.
I
I
can
mean,
do
I don't
that.
know if other people want that, but I'm going to take the risk of saying maybe people do. Would you be willing to do it again?
Be happy to. People, when it's unexpected, it's unexpected. Once you've heard it, you need to hear it, and I've heard it many times. So Clarissa says this: there is a 2 million-year-old man no one knows. They cut into his rivers. They peeled wide pieces of hide from his legs. They left scorch marks on his buttocks. He did not cry out. No matter what they did to him, he did not cry out. He held firm. And now he raises his stabbed hands and whispers that we can heal him yet. We begin the rolls of gauze, the gut, the needles, the grafts. Slowly, carefully, we turned his body face up. And underneath him, the old woman, his lifelong lover, is perfect and unmarked. He has laid upon his 2 million-year-old lover all this time, protecting her with his old back, with his old scarred back. And the soil beneath her is fertile and black with her tears. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Father Earth.
Hmm. Yeah, that's just beautiful. And you say it and read it so well. And there's a note in the chat, great poem, and then also referring us to the good earth. Um, so putting that into people's minds. There's some themes in that I'd love to unpack. And in what you said, I'd love to unpack more with you. Um, so when I read Women Who Run with the Wolves, I mean, I'm a man, but I was blown away by it. If people have not read that book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, great book, and it brings up the Jungian and and my first three books were Jungian, and I just think that's a beautiful way to look at the world, and it's very helpful, archetypes, etc., for folks who might not know. Um, and a great companion with the Robert Bly Iron John, like they were all coming out at the same time, right? As you know, and if folks haven't read Iron John, which came out in 1990, definitely worth reading, even though it's an older book. The the unpacking of that poem, it makes me ask. So providing and protecting got a bad rap, right? I mean, saying, well, men should provide and protect got a bad rap, and probably the word should was the problem with that men can provide, but we don't want to pigeonhole them, and we don't want to say women don't provide and protect because they do, right? And yet that poem is getting at something about that protectiveness, um, that's inside us as males. Is that right? Do you hear that?
Absolutely. And I think it's, for me, it's a part of the going deeper than the surface, the kind of human dialogue and the this and that, are women more this or men more that. There's deeper truths. The fact that this was written by a woman, I think, speaks, and a somebody with her background, but I think it speaks to one, our evolutionary history, 2 million-year-old man, uh, and his lover, 2 million-year-old woman lover, and a billion-year-old history of maleness and femaleness that goes back to the animal kingdom, which are our teachers as well as our indigenous, people. So it just speaks in deep ways that poets speak that I think can enhance the science and the clinical work that we all do.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's okay to protect, right? I mean, would it be okay to say to raise part of maturing boys is to say, you know what, you have a sacred role. Like,
Absolutely.
is that okay? Do you think?
It is with me, and I think it's, part of not just protecting our own turf, it's not just it's protecting those we love, it's protecting the earth, the feminine principle. There's a lot there that I think speaks to deep truth of the kind of things we want to teach young men, and not only that recognize that we need to protect our own health, our own vulnerability, our own. If we're not alive, we can't help others. And all the things we're saying are what we need to teach our sons and our daughters about how life can be and how it needs to be in the future for all of us.
Hmm. And then there's a comment, and we should also realize that boys and men also deserve protection. And
Indeed.
thank you for that comment in the chat. Absolutely. Uh, in while we're waiting for more questions in the area of men's health for 1 second, could you speak at all to how you would like to see psychological and physiologic health systems change or adjust so that they can better serve men, boys and men?
Yeah, well, I've been, doing that in both my own family, my own life, my own clinical practice. And I think that there's really two things that I think we need to pay attention to. One is that we all need to recognize that the stereotypes of males and females, are ones that have not served us. That we need to speak to the deeper truth, the science, the feelings that we all feel both as human beings and also the real biological basic, lifelong gender differences that are important without excluding anybody. And I think what you've been doing and what so many of others have been bringing it to light is that these are now truths that we all need. And I think it's starting to make impact in the world of healthcare and the world of caring for men and boys. And I think it's catching on in a way that I think hasn't in years past. And a lot of that has to do with you and a lot of the people that have been speaking, over these last number of days.
Mm. Okay, yeah, thank you. And there's comment. Mark says, as I'm sure you all know, progressives in quote marks, including those involved with Division 51 of American Psychological Association. I'll take a second to tell people what that is. American Psychological Association, in a sense, sets policy and guidelines for those of us who are therapists. And Division 51 is this sort of extreme, really, group that decided to put out some guidelines were that a number of us were asked to react to. So, including those involved in Division 51 of the American Psychological Association, who study men and masculinities, quote marks, pay almost no attention to biology. Very true. A former colleague of mine, Mark says, in academic psychology, doesn't believe in evolutionary psychology at all. So Mark asks, how do we address this bias, which has huge effects in the big three? And he puts that in quotes marks, and we talk about the academy, so the universities, the media, and government as the big three. So how do we address this bias even against the existence of evolutionary psychology?
Well, I can just speak for myself. I generally have not joined organizations. I tend to have my own path, and I seem to be shunned by some on the left and some on the right because I speak in ways that seem to both interest many people and alienate some. And I joined Division 51 a number of years ago to try to share. I know a lot of the people there. There are definitely some good people there that have some understanding of biological and evolutionary issues. But the truth was, not very many did. And at some point, I just said, well, I'm not here to try to change your mind. There are things that I hope you will learn, and if you don't, I've other places I will go to share my expertise. So I think there are many places that we can continue to go. People will wake up at their own times, and the truth is, there, there's some lighthouse issues that eventually people will come to the truth that if you're going to get people to wake up, they will wake up eventually in their own time to the truth as we know it, and science and the things that evolution has taught us have some truth that will long last way past whatever the divisions are that have not woken up yet.
Okay, yeah. Um, and then Gordon says, "Our well, wait, before I say what Gordon says, I want to echo what you just said. So I think I was on two or three calls. I was invited on to Division 51, and I was on two or three Zoom calls, and I said, no, I can't. Similar experience you had. Like there was just to me, they were not actually dealing with males. They were involved in social construct theory and masculinities and all this stuff that um, just like you, I just figured I can't penetrate this. It's so so I echo, and that was painful to see that they set the policy, and and that they're not even able to talk about the male brain. Like it made them so nervous to say those words. And Gordon asks, so are we saying that protect and provide are culture training rather than hardwiring, or both? So you see his question, like we're arguing obviously that there's hardwiring there. Um, so are we saying protect and provide are culture training rather than wiring? Question mark.
Well, I think one of the confusions that I've seen over the years in uh, introducing people to biological and looking at genetic differences is that people have come to believe, and some of it was early ways in which it was presented, that if it's biological or if it's has genetic, it's hardwired in a way that can't change.
Right.
And the truth is, it's just the opposite. We know, and this is somewhat new science in epigenetics and looking at genetic ways in which our brains work, our genes work, is that from an evolutionary perspective, all of this changes over time. There's nothing hardwired in the sense it can't change. In fact, it's the opposite. Some of the things that are unchangeable are more like beliefs that people have that they recircuit, but actual science and the biology evolves all the time. So the idea of, hardwired and unchangeable genetics really is not accurate. And I think once people slowly get that, then it opens up wider understanding of how we evolve, and these things don't have to be in conflict. Biology is not in conflict with social change and all the ways that we understand it's all of these areas, and that it just takes hopefully some learning, and things are changing. I've been in the field 60 years, and I've seen a lot of good change, a lot of good people who didn't understand are understanding. And we all have, and I think this is kind of the underlying thing I want to remind everybody, is that we are the growing edge of a movement that is in support not only of boys and men, but everybody in the world, and our own survival of the human species. We're not inevitably here as some humans might believe that we're the apex, and no matter what we do, we're going to make everything good happen. We're a newcomer to the evolutionary game, and we need to have all the help we can get, including good people like at this conference and our animal brothers and sisters that have been here. That's why I get out every day and talk to the animals, because they got a lot to teach us, as well as the trees and all the other life that we share planet Earth with.
Mm, beautiful. And Mark in the chat is Mark Sherman. He's a retired psychologist um, and author. He says, I'm in Division 51. He's also the person who asked the question before. He says, I'm in Division 51. And I think I've helped change some of them in a positive way. More acceptance of biology. I keep trying. So thank you, Mark. A brave soul. Thank you. Okay, so going back, we're waiting for more questions if you have them, folks. And going back to the hardwiring, we know that's a metaphor, right? I mean, hardwiring, soft wiring, kind of a metaphor. You said something there. I just want to unpack because I think there are two different things being said. Epigenetics, right? You mentioned genetics and epigenetics. So epigenetics, things can change in each generation. At the same time, what we're saying is that there's male brain and female brain, and there's huge variety in male brain, huge variety in female brain, but they are male brain and female brain. So you're saying two things at once, right?
What are you
Because
hearing? What
it
two
sounded
things are
like you
you
were
hearing?
saying, well, there's nothing that nature's bringing in, but I don't think you were saying that.
No, no, that yeah, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm saying that this idea that there are these hard and fast differences between nature and nurture, what's biological and what's, been part of our social upbringing, or that the things that are biological somehow don't change. And the truth is things evolve all the time and change, and they're not locked in. That there are things that we know with how our brains work, how our ideas and thoughts can influence how our genetics, whether the switches turn on or turn off a chemical reaction. There's just new things going on all the time, and you've at this conference uh, uh, underlined a whole lot of brain science and evolutionary theory that's changing all the time. New things are happening, and we need to stay on top of what we're learning all the time so that we can all grow and change. And hopefully that makes us better people and better able to take care of, our children and all the children of the future.
Right. Yeah. So, so that you've just also said something really important there about how environment and biology interact and the triggering of genetic markers. You're kind of were hinting at that. And that is actually a huge thing that people, right, that we all need to know. And I'd love you to, if you want to, talk more about how environment triggers the markers. Like, for instance, a person can have addiction genetics, which are pretty robust genetics. But if they're not triggered, that person may never become an addict, right? If trauma doesn't trigger it, or if something doesn't trigger it. Um, if it is triggered, then those genetics get triggered, those markers get triggered, right? I mean, so the reinteraction of biology and environment is huge, as you're saying, and um, talk about that, would you? And in the context of creating environments that nurture boys in a sense so that some of the negative stuff isn't triggered. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It's just hard to give uh, good explanations in a short period of time. So for me, I mean, some of the examples that are kind of resonant in my life is that I've spoken openly about my own bipolar disorder, and we know that, for instance, bipolar disorder it has a genetic component. My father, although he had his before it was well understood, and so he ended up in a mental hospital when I was 5 years old. And so I have a genetic and hereditary predisposition, as do my, if you looked at my family history. And yet it doesn't mean that the genes that may make me more likely to have certain things, and there's a whole host of other examples I could give, doesn't mean I'm inevitably going to get it, or that there aren't other related causes. And so knowing that I had a genetic predisposition was part of when I started having symptoms. Uh, like many therapists, I denied it for a long time. No, I'm a therapist. I can handle, I mean, I had all kinds of rationalizations like many people do. And it was, I finally was able to go and get into treatment, and was working with, and still do. I still work with a doctor when I need my own help, because whether we're addicts or we have our own issues, Fletch has talked about some of her, ways in which her early childhood experience and probably some of her genetic background has influenced, her life. So I think the point is that these predispositions, don't inevitably make us we're going to get it, but there are things that we can do to actually influence the way the genetics express themselves in our lives, that we can change, what the genes do and how they, you know, there's switch, more complicated than I'm saying it, but genetic switches that either are turned on or turned off depending on a lot of our thoughts, our way of understanding, our environments, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, for people who are like parents of boys here, even the junk food they eat and the endocrine receptors, right, in that junk food can actually trigger um, ragged edges on genetic markers. So, right, so really the environment does matter. What you're saying, Jed, is so important. The environment does matter for gene expression. That's what you're saying,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And here's a comment. As a counselor, therapist, actually, there are two comments about autism. So I'm going to read them both and ask you if you want to comment. Comment on the increasing prevalence of autism, how it fits in this discussion, and then do you know anything about the new diagnosis of autism AHD combo? Why autism and other mental illnesses are dealt with separately? Any comments there on autism and ADHD?
Um, yeah, just I don't know a lot of specific things about the latest, on autism. It's not something I've followed, but one of the things Dr. Amen, talked about in your interview of him is that there's so many things that are going on in that we fail to understand. One, because we don't do brain scans, we don't actually get good data uh, about what's going on. And then because there is so much that's toxic in our environments today, we don't have good tools for understanding what may be causing, an increase in autism, for instance. And so we get all kinds of, somewhat uninformed theories, from some people in our government, some people in health, supposed healthcare, that just come up with ideas that scare people and send people in the wrong direction. So that's why, real science and real people that are studying these, and I'm glad I hadn't known Dr. Amen is starting to, get some of his work internationally, not just here in the U.S. So we really have a lot more we need to learn, and beyond that, I can just, refer people to being sure you're getting good science and understanding that there's so much about our environmental, including the what we do online with boys and others, that causes brain damage, causes our brains to be disrupted and our hormones and other parts of our health system of our body, mind, and spirit.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so hard often for parents whose kids get a diagnosis. It's so hard. Parents blame themselves as if they did something wrong to make their child autistic, when of course these are genetic markers that are coming in, and these are most of the time they're already triggered in utero, and right, and there's some. I mean, I have this in my books. There's a lot of good research showing that these are mutations that are happening in sperm and egg.
Yeah.
So, like, I always beg parents, don't blame yourselves. This is stuff that's happening. It's mutating, and we're dealing with all the consequences and trying to adapt to it, and while figuring out. And I think the environmental neurotoxins is the best theory I've seen, um, which is the endocrine disruptors and all the pesticides, fertilizer, all of this. That's the best theory I've seen. But like you say, everyone's still studying it to figure out exact etiology. Okay, as a counselor therapist, Mark asks, as a counselor therapist, how much would you recommend offering psychoeducation about the biology of males, neuroscience research, and evolutionary processes? So with your clients.
Oh, you mean with
with your patients and clients? I think that's what he's asking. Should
well,
we
I
do
think,
psychoeducation?
yeah, I think like all the things we all do, we have to apply whatever intervention we're offering to our audience that's appropriate. So if it's a client, I will give him or her things that I think will be helpful to them. If you're in an educational setting and you're teaching teachers or you're working with parents, you adapt what kind of information. But if the bigger question is, does this biological evolutionary, you know, uh, information need to get out more widely and to be able to be offered in different forms for kids, for adults, for clients, for all the people that are in the business one way or the other of helping each other or teaching each other. Yes, we need more and more of this.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I in my therapeutic practice over the decades, I've definitely taught this to couples,
Yeah,
um, to help with couples communication, male female brain, and
exactly.
I've shown brain scans, and the couples just like, wow.
Yeah,
So yeah, I agree with you that it can be
it's
very helpful. Another comment, I'm sorry, question: can we talk more about the health crisis for men and boys and how systems are not supporting their health? Can you talk maybe more about what you maybe a couple changes you'd like to see in systems so that they supported boys and men's health better?
well, it's been said, and I think what I've tried to underline is that this idea that there has been biases against women for a long time that we've recognized in many aspects of life, and that we need to address those, and people have been doing that. But we often didn't see the shift, and there have been many, now Richard Reeves, I think, is one of the people who, colleagues of, that have been studying this for a long time, and maybe because he was originally from the UK rather than the US, he was able to see from the outsider that things had shifted, and now there were things that boys and men were falling behind in, and we've talked a lot about this in the bigger conference. So I think part of the recognizing that it's okay to be able to say women may have been falling behind in these areas and we need to pay attention to them, but boys and men have been falling behind in these areas and we need to pay attention. And underlying both of those is that some of the same, biases and some of the same lack of science that was causing problems for women are causing problems for males. So, coming together not only rather than saying, well, we're going to give men more or women, what we give to men is going to help women, and what we give to women is going to help men. If we get out of what I think is this long, I think, standing fear and belief that if you talk about one sex or one group, you're somehow excluding the other. And that's why this conference, I think, and you've been so successful at bringing together the diversity where you really can't accuse us or you of saying, well, we're only talking about boys and men here, and it's only boys and men that we have on the faculty or the ones that are talking. We've got a wide diversity, and I think we need more of that. But we live in a society that's very polarized, and it polarizes just about any subject that is controversial, and people are making a lot of money and a lot of mileage and political capital from keeping people polarized and sick.
Boy, that's the truth. Yeah. Yeah, it, it it's such I don't know. You and I talk about it offline. Like Jed and I are friends, and we talk about how we just shake our heads at the fact that it has to be this way. That the kind of the big three have set it up so that if you care about boys and men, then you don't care about girls and women. Um, uh, just not true. But you're right. That is how it is set up. So that's probably, practically speaking, the first thing we got to do, right, to help with health. Do you? Let me ask you: do you think we ought to have, like we have women and children's centers, we ought to have boys and men centers where those
Absolutely.
people
Yeah,
specialize in the health of boys and men?
absolutely we should. And I've advocated that for a long time. We need both separate places where women can hang out with women. That's why my wife is in three women's groups. And I'm in a men's group, and that doesn't mean we were in some groups together. So there's nothing wrong, and I think something very right with acknowledging that there are places where men can value and get benefit from being with other men and women
Hmm.
with other women and people that don't identify as a binary, if they, want to join in other ways. We need more joining, more connection, less loneliness, and how we do that, I think, is good. And we just need to go ahead and do it, whether people, in a sense, everybody's not going to support no matter what we do, but got to do what is right for us and for the world.
Yeah, beautifully put. I think we've answered all the questions. There's a comment: men do not have enough spaces, especially in healthcare, which supports what you're saying. Thank you, Arlene, for that. And I think that's just perfect to end on. Jed, thank you so much. So much wisdom. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining, and then everyone who will watch on YouTube. Blessings
Good.
to you.
Yes,
Blessings to
Thanks so
all.
much.
Thank
thank
you.
you. Please make sure you complete the evaluation and feedback inside of the chat. If you want to get in touch with Jed, please make sure you email him, and we will see you at our next session at 2 o'clock PST. So we'll see you there. Have a good one.